Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Big View, Ending Poverty in Your Community. At Circles, our mission is building community to end poverty through intentional friendships, personal transformation, and systemic change, led by the people closest to the challenge. And our vision for the future is all individuals live in equitable and thriving communities where poverty no longer exists.
Hello, welcome to the Big View podcast. Today, this is season 2, episode 4 of the Big View. And this whole season, we are talking about the Big View mindset. And this is the third of a 3-part series on centering people and purpose. And today, we're talking about narrative change. My name is Kris Alexander. I am the Chief Learning Officer at Circles USA. I am joined with my co-host, Kamatara Johnson, the Executive Director of Circles USA. And we are so excited to be welcoming Circles Grant County. And we have with us Andrew Sprock, he was the executive director at Circles Grant County, and he is the Midwest regional coach for Circles USA, and also a community ally super volunteer at Circles Grant County. And then we also have Kayla Johnson. She is an AmeriCorps volunteer, and she has been serving as a super volunteer all over Circles Grant County, including operating as a board member for them. So the reason that we have invited specifically these folks and Circles Grant County to join us is because they have a storytelling resource team in their Circles chapter. So they have seen how important narrative changes and storytelling, so much so that they've created an entire resource team about it. So these folks really are the experts on this topic, and we're so excited to be talking to them today. So to begin, the first question that I want to just throw out there to y'all is, why is storytelling important for systems change?
Ooh, I would love to take a little piece of that because I just got back from Washington, D.C. And we were there, Circles was there with our partner organization, Bread for the World, and we were advocating for all the things you would expect, like don't cut SNAP and don't cut WIC and, the things, programs that are absolutely essential. We don't want to balance the budget on the backs of the people who need the most support. And so we had over 400 delegates, all the states, even Puerto Rico, and we got to meet with all the different representatives. And the meetings went well. They were really powerful. They did arm us with facts and statistics. But more importantly, when we got into the meetings with the staffers and the representatives, when folks shared their stories, their personal stories, that's when our policymakers really sat up. Like it connected the head to the heart, and the nation to their local constituents, or what is the lived experience of this policy. So it was so impactful for people to share real stories, like the college student on SNAP who said, well, I'm happy to just eat one meal a day, but I can't do that on the weekends. Oh, and just to feel that. Or when I could share my WIC story of, as a former school teacher, part of the working poor, and absolutely depending on those WIC checks in the first 1,000 days for nutrition for me and for my babies. So remember that systems change as people change, and people are all about stories. So I'm really excited to learn more about what inspired Circles Grant County and Marion, Indiana. Like, what inspired you to create a storytelling resource team?
Yeah, well, it really came out of a moment of crisis for us. We were just a few years into doing circles, and hit a spot where our funding was was really low. There was there was just some discouraging kind of challenges that some of our circle leaders were facing, and our our match circles weren't having the traction that we'd hoped. And so we really felt like we were at this point of decision. Are we going to keep doing this? And if so, we've got to do something differently. Or are we going to decide that this season has, run its course and it's time to to be done, to figure out the ways that we're going to close together. So we at that point we were again recognizing that the value that at the core of what we're doing, we've got to be deeply connected to one another, and we've got to be able to um, share compellingly with our community what's happening here.
Mhm.
And so we said, well, the only way we can do that is to make space for the most essential things, which is sharing our lives with one another intentionally through stories. So we decided that we were going to change up our rhythm and dedicate one night a month to that, and just make space for us to know one another more deeply, and to be able to, um, out of that practice of telling our stories with one another, we believed that it would help us to be better storytellers to others outside of our weekly gathering that might also find the work that we're doing to resonate with their hearts and minds. And so that was our moment of crisis, and we decided if we're going to survive, if we're going to weather this, this has got to be an essential practice for us. And so, in much the same way that COVID changed a lot of our lives, and we've kept with our more common, it's more common to have virtual meetings, and there's these things that
Mhm.
come out of crisis that end up being sustained, and we find ways that they benefit us even in good times. That certainly has been the story for our chapter, is that it was such a deeply valuable and formative practice that
Mhm.
we have continued it because it feels so life-giving and essential to what we're doing.
Yeah, I love that so much, and what I especially love is it didn't start out as this, like, system there wasn't this big systems change goal in
Mhm.
mind with your storytelling, it was really a way for y'all to deepen with each other is what I'm hearing, it was really a way for y'all to, solidify the community and practice sharing your stories. Which really kind of leads me into a question about I think we have this idea that anybody can share their own story. But it's not just an innate ability, right? It's a
Mhm.
skill set we develop. It's something that can be really challenging to do, especially we know that people experiencing poverty are experiencing trauma because poverty is inherently traumatic.
Mhm.
And that often people who are experiencing poverty have other trauma in their past. So, how do y'all support folks to tell their story without re-traumatizing themselves? And also, how do you create a safe space for those stories to be shared?
Um, One of the things that we do, yeah, is monthly we have a story night and we give some prompts for folks that they can use to be able to tell their stories, and they're all challenge by choice kind of prompts. And so sometimes folks, I mean, we might ask a really challenging question that could be like, share about something really sad that happened in your childhood or something, or share about the first time that you moved on your own, which can have different types of um, reactions that folks could experience emotionally. And so, yeah, for some, it might be like, oh, well, my story moving out on my own was going to college. But for others, it might be my story of moving out on my own was moving out of a difficult relationship with a partner. And so I had to get away from that situation. And I'd always, lived with someone, but I had to get out of that situation and figure out how to live on my own. So, like you were saying in your question, like these things don't come up naturally and they're hard to share, but having those different prompts allows us to show the different narratives in the room and be able to just meet each other where we're at and empathize with each other in the challenges and in the celebratory prompts that we also ask, like share about a fun birthday or stuff like that. But it just allows us to share those stories. A part of storytelling, like you could tell it in a narrative format, but one of the ways that it can enable you to kind of get out of your mind and maybe being more in tune with your whole self is to we have folks take a whole piece of paper and draw like a cross, so it kind of looks like 4 different window panes, and then we have them with the prompts doodle something about the prompt. So yeah, I said some of the prompts. So when we ask like, what's the first time that you moved on your own, I might have drawn like a college dorm bed or something, and then it just allows you to, utilize the arts in a way that kind of gets you into your whole self and thinking differently than just like telling a story. So then we'll do those kind of 4 different prompts. Everyone will draw a little doodle. You don't have to be great at drawing to do it either, but it just allows you to try to tell the story in your own way through a doodle. And then we'll get into small groups, and then folks will share about their doodles. And you might not realize what you're doodling about, that I drew something that, also had a book in it or something that was meaningful to me in that time, or that there was like a puppy dog at my birthday party that was really meaningful at that time or something. But as your partners in that small group are asking you questions about your doodle, you kind of end up telling maybe more than you even realized that maybe you wanted to tell, but it's all, by choice. So yeah, I think that those different elements allow us to tell our story, but also the giving the prompts with the element of challenge by choice. We want you to share what you're comfortable sharing. Allows people to choose their own level of vulnerability that they're feeling appropriate towards.
Well, I love not only the choice, so people can, gauge their own comfort levels, like they're in control of what they can share, but pedagogically speaking, the old high school teacher me that loves neuroscience cannot resist that the window pane idea and the doodle. I mean, it's right brain, it's left brain, it's part of divergent thinking, tapping into our creativity, but it's also disarming. It helps take some of the charge out of it. Like I get a moment to process myself. Something might come up that I didn't even realize. Yeah, it helps you drop from your head to your heart, and then it also feels like, well, it's like we're at a coffee shop and we're sitting around just talking, and here's this little thing, or like being a docent at the museum. I'm going to tell you about this work of art that is my life. So all the aspects of that are just so beautiful, and then also no judgment for people's art skills, because I couldn't just do a stencil.
Right.
Yeah.
It's also like it gives it a certain lightness about things that may be really difficult to share, but to create that safe space. And the small groups, I heard that you got them into smaller groups, so I'm not just like standing in front of a huge crowd, because public speaking is right up there with the fear of death. So public speaking can be really scary, but okay, I'm in this safe group and I'm going to choose, and here's my fabulous work of art, and I'm going to tell you about it. Oh, I love that. Has that been your experience of it?
Yeah, definitely. I think even the giggles that come from showing, it's a little vulnerable just in the showing my work of art kind of moments, but it allows to kind of break the ice of the prompts.
Let me add to that a little bit too, but since you're talking neuroscience, Kamatara, pictures and the connection to memory is really important too. So when somebody's shared a picture that goes along with the story, it's amazing how much more that story is retained by the listeners, because there's an image that goes with it that really sticks in their mind. And I would say, even just as part of my experience, the small groups I've been in, there's probably, for so many people, I can look at them and if asked to recall one of their stories, I can do it, because I'm like, oh, they drew that picture of this. Oh yeah, that was the story they told. And so it doesn't just change the experience of the presenter. It very much changes the experience of the listener as well. And I love, again, as Kayla said already, it is a way of leading with vulnerability, because for most people, their art, the practice of drawing, is not something they feel a great degree of competency in. There are some folks that are gifted in it, but for most people, you're starting out with vulnerability just by starting with stick figures.
Well, and it kind of puts everybody on an even playing field, unless they're like an amazing drawing artist, right? Because even a lot of times artists who paint can't draw, right? Like the two don't necessarily go together. But yeah, it kind of just puts everybody into that space of vulnerability, but on an even playing field. So it's not I'm being more vulnerable because my story is so much more traumatic than yours. We're not comparing traumas.
Mhm.
Woundology. I'll show you my wounds and you show you yours, and we'll all be wounded together. I appreciate that it doesn't go there.
Yeah, so that's a really, really powerful way to do it. My follow-up question to that is, have y'all have y'all seen in yourselves and other folks as you've done sort of these storytelling exercises, that your storytelling has improved? Like, is it something where it's people just kind of naturally get better at this skill set that is being developed in this way?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think one of the things we do with this also is give in our small groups we time how long you have to share. So everybody's going to have you know 2 minutes to describe your drawing or whatever. So that's a really important part of it too, because the boundaries around being concise help us to pick the most important things. And it also, I think that helps just, again, just with this practice of telling a story. You've got 2 minutes. What's the most important thing? So I would say in that way, it's been helpful. Um, and uh, yeah, are we better storytellers? I don't know that I don't know I have a good rubric for what I mean, obviously, what I just referenced is that you've got to be able to say the most important things in a
Mhm.
relatively concise window. So we're better at that part of storytelling. I think, I think another piece is that I think we were better listeners
Mm.
in different kinds of ways. So not only we're better storytellers, but I mean, our rules of engagement are this person has 2 minutes and they can share their story. And if they have a little bit of extra time, you can ask a question about it. But we also tell people we're not in this space. We're not giving you the chance to like, oh, that reminds me of when I. No, you can ask
Yeah.
them questions about their drawing, but you don't get to comment on the things that you relate to in this space. So in that way, I think those are storytelling techniques, but there's also just listening practices that I think have been formative for us.
One thing too, as the listener, that and the to go back to the trauma related pieces of this question, as the listener, we ask folks, when you go from here, remember to just carry forward what is impactful to you, but don't tell someone else's story. Um, so just to try to guide and guard the vulnerabilities of others, that it's not yours to tell, but you can tell that you heard something that was impactful and tell your side of why, like what was impactful. So trying to, yeah, just guide and guard those that are being vulnerable, in ways that need to, um, allow them to tell their own story, which is part of, like, yeah, being trauma informed, is being able to allow them to guide their own process.
Yeah,
So
their own narrative for sure. Um,
mhm.
so I absolutely, just listening to y'all talk, I want to come hang out at your circles because it's so obvious like how important this framework is for building the community in your circles chapter. And I'm wondering now how that has spread out bigger. Like, have you seen this practice or really this prioritizing of people's stories and narratives shift any of the larger communal ideas around poverty or the individuals or maybe their personal experiences if there's a lot of ideas or stereotypes around that? Have you noticed any kind of bigger shifts either in your circles chapter between people across lines of difference or out in the community as a result?
One of the things I think has been valuable about this practice for us is that it has reinforced people's voice in
Mm.
ways that, as I think about the ways in which we share about our experience of circles in the community, um, in much of the same way that appreciations at the end continue to reinforce the value of somebody's contribution. This practice has reinforced that in a different kind of way to say, what you when people get feedback that their story is worth hearing and
Mm.
and and being seen in that way, then I think it gives them a different degree of confidence that what they have to share is valuable. And so, as we practice together, this mirroring back to somebody of whether it's grieving with them at times or celebrating or acknowledging the range of emotions that come up in storytelling, I think it reinforces to people that I don't have to be afraid because my what I have to share um, really other people can meet me in it, and that's one of the things that I think has definitely formed us and given us greater voice with one another, but even in the ways in which we interact with others in the community. And I will add another piece to the way we do this, is in particular the window pane activity that we're talking about, is we do our appreciations just in those small groups on that night too.
Mm.
So that we don't, not moving back out into the larger group to do appreciations. We stay in the smaller groups to do our appreciations so that there's these moments that where people really can. And the way it almost always works is I think there's this reverence and
Mm.
honor to the appreciation after you've heard somebody's story that you can draw on, um, that is really sincere.
Mm.
There's a different feel for leaving circles after a story night than there is on any other night because there is this reverence for we have sat together in a sacred space because people have shared their lives,
Mm.
and it's good and it's beautiful and it's hard and it's all worth celebrating, that we get to be together in it. And so I think it really is a way in which we feel bound together
Mm.
in such significant ways. I don't think I
Wow.
answered your question, but
It's okay. You answered a more important question that I didn't know I had asked. So, Kayla, did you want to add to that?
I think, yeah, just echo ditto to what Andrew said. Like, there's a lot of just in the shared vulnerability. I think your question had to do with um, have we seen any shifts? And I think the shifts that I hear in what Andrew's saying and that I was considering was the things that, yeah, when somebody shares a story and like they knew it was maybe difficult, but when somebody reflects back, like that sounds really hard. I know that's happened to like for me, like in therapy or in these story nights, but like it's a like a mini therapy moment where somebody just gets to like acknowledge, yeah, you're right, that was really hard. Like like knowing that it was maybe a challenging time and but if you've gone through a lot of challenging times you're just kind of like bah, it was just part of life but to have somebody who like experiences it with you through that storytelling, I guess it brings it back to like yeah, it's okay to be sad about that or um and like Andrew said, like the full range of emotion, like that sounds like a blast, like that you got to do XYZ
Mm.
and to be able to like relive that through telling the story and remember like that was a blast to like go on that vacation or whatever. So or to experience that water slide for the first time or I don't know, whatever it might be. But I think that there's a piece of even just like the mental health moments of just acknowledging the range of emotions that um, people need to experience and that they can experience through storytelling or re-storytelling. So
Well, and I think there's a couple things I want to pull out from all of that. I think there's something so important about just the validation, what you were saying, Kayla, about we if we're constantly in this space of survival or just doing the next thing in front of us, this sort of tyranny of the moment that we talk about, or the 72-hour mindset where we
Mm-hmm.
can't really think ahead when we're experiencing poverty because we're just trying to get by right here, right now, that we don't realize how much we've been through or how hard it's been because we don't have the time to process any of that. And so, telling that story and then having people say like, wow, that was really hard. And you did it, right? You got through that moment. You're no longer in that now is really profound. You're right. It really is kind of this not a therapy moment in that you're receiving therapy, but a therapy moment in that you're receiving the benefits that you might receive from therapy of just being validated for what you've gone through in your life. Um
And maybe even the more appropriate, instead of like therapy, because I know circles
no.
is not therapy, in the mental health sense like that, but authentic
Yes.
relationships. And that's like what circles is trying to do, is build authentic relationships, to overcome poverty. And um, everyone who experiences thriving or is moving towards thriving experiences a lot of authentic relationships. And I think that's one of the things that starts sometimes in even a story night, or just continues and moves people towards each other and to experience those authentic
And
relationships.
that's where the healing happens. Not
Mhm.
only that people who are heard feel seen, but then to have that validation or that empathy, and like we all get to practice that together, and then to have that on a regular basis, then I can change the narrative that's in my head. Oh, I do matter. I am good. People do care. I have been through a lot, and it matters that I keep going. Like all of that, it helped. Like, yes, me sharing my story outward is huge, but then having it received helps me to change the story inside my head just as much as we may be shifting the narrative that's out in the community. And not only is that building the community, but that's healing
Mhm.
so much, and building those relationships that are a lifetime of relationships, and having that time to reflect and to process and not just be go 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 do just stop and
Mhm.
just breathe for a moment, and to practice that reverence. I love all of those ideas so much. That's truly healing and transforming lives.
It is. And we all have a story, right? We all have infinite stories. And so I can imagine there's also some like, wow, I'm not the only one, or wow, I thought everybody else felt like that was easy. Kind of thinking about the first time that you move out on your own, that's not a good experience for everyone, even just the folks that got to go to college, right? And so like recognizing like, oh wow, that sounds like it was really challenging for you, unexpectedly so, and just recognizing the shared humanity, and then finding other ways that we share identities that are maybe deeper than some of the surface ones that we tend to group ourselves in with. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, I think we're talking about healing, or it was referenced, and I think part of this too is just there's a connection between the stories we tell or the stories we repeat and our resilience. And I think
Mm.
this is really an important part of that. Like the connection between our memory and resilience is one that we need to be attentive to. And how do we tell the stories that help us, as we've referenced, to remember? Oh, you know what? I made it through. Or there's things worth celebrating in my past. It's not all this way. It's this way too. You know, I think it
Mhm.
honors complexity in ways that it's really important, and it helps to build resilience.
Mhm.
And I would add another piece too. You know, oftentimes there's a gap for allies in this sense of what's progress is for the circle leaders
Mm,
they're matched with, and it gives a little more
Mm-hmm.
perspective to allies often about where somebody has been, and then where they are in what preceded the times before they met. And if you can add that context, then it helps. give a deeper appreciation for even what may have initially seemed like just very incremental progress. In perspective, in the long game, it can be acknowledged as a significant progress that it is.
Wow. And it's that context that a lot of our policymakers and community leaders may be missing, as well as not all, but many of them don't have the lived experience of poverty, or they haven't had, they may not be impacted by some of the laws and policies that they're making. So for community leaders to have some of that context too, so that I love that there's a chance to practice in the safety in small groups and having all that time to practice in community and in the circles chapter, but then also to know, like, could we build a bridge, build a relationship with our policymakers and community leaders where there's an opportunity then to share those 2 minutes and really get to that context. So now there's a context for the policies that our community leaders are making. I think that'd just be such a powerful connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of really rolls me back around to have you seen this sort of storytelling night, storytelling team play a role in your systems change work or in your big view work, as we call it?
I mean, I know that through our poverty simulations that we've done, where we, for those that I guess don't know what a poverty simulation is, we get folks together and we usually try to get a large group and simulate what the experience of poverty can look like, and we give a simulation of a story that somebody might be experiencing that is represented by circle leaders that aren't necessarily local, but like throughout the United States. But they're given that scenario of maybe being a single mom with a child and making minimum wage. And then around the room are some resources that exist. So everywhere from anything from the school to the supermarket to the gas station, the pawn shop, family services kind of situation. So all of those resources are around the room, and then folks walk through about an hour, and every 15 minutes represents a week, and they have to kind of go through to try to basically make it through the month. And with your scenario, and try to you have to make sure, of course, that you're getting fed, that your kids are getting fed, that you maintain shelter, some of your basic needs, and then at the end of the hour or the quote unquote month, like, we talk through how that went. And a lot of folks experience the tyranny of the moment that you don't experience if you've never experienced poverty, but that hour simulation really gives people that story and that experience of what it feels like, even in your body, like the stress that you experience through that hour to try to make ends meet by following the rules of the scenario and the simulation. And I think that I know that there's a lot of folks that have walked away, like, just with that experience, like approaching someone differently. Like, when someone's stressed out at the supermarket, you might have a different approach to understanding that there could be more going on, like what else is going on maybe for that person. So yeah, I just think that different experiences in story can also prompt change and create a community, even if those folks don't continue to be directly connected to circles, they're connected to our county, and so then they carry forward that experience of having tried to live out the experience of poverty through the simulation, and that story shifts people. So I know at the end of the simulation, one of the things that we've done is even ask people, did you have time during the month to do something fun? And a lot of folks are just like, that didn't even cross my mind. And so just like to be able to realize, like, yeah, survival, when you start to create these different prejudices that people might have to folks who are experiencing poverty, why don't you take your kids to the park and do something fun? It's like, well, they're experiencing the tyranny of the moment. They're consistently thinking of how to make ends meet, and so to try and do something fun is really challenging. So it just kind of opens up the window of people to live out that experience through the simulation, and hopefully changes the way that they approach their prejudice or preconceived thoughts around someone that experiences life so differently. So
Awesome.
Yeah, I think the poverty simulation is a really powerful, immersive story experience.
All right. Well, y'all, we're about out of time. um, so I just really quickly want to throw out there for anybody who may be listening to this podcast, who isn't a part of circles. I wanted to give a quick definition of appreciations, because Andrew mentioned them. So at the one of our cultural things in circles is that the end of every meeting, we spend time going around and appreciating one another. And we ensure that everybody both gets to appreciate someone and gets appreciated by someone. And it's a really beautiful, just kind of moment of connection, like Andrew was describing. And then I want to wrap up with the question. Oh, and also, if you're listening to this podcast, check out the podcast notes, because we will put in some poverty simulation resources where you could experience that yourself if that's something that you're interested in doing. And so, my final question for y'all is, if another Circles chapter wanted to start their own storytelling night or team, what advice would you give them for that?
Um, I think one of them is would be to think about this process as micro stories. So give people a chance to tell little stories at a time, little bites that are done consistently over time, and uh, I think that helps to grow people's confidence and make space for everybody to share. So start with little stories in little groups.
Awesome. I love that advice. Yeah.
there's a maybe Andrew, you can help me remember, but there's some questions that we had that we got offline. I think there were like 4 different sections, and it kind of starts with like more surface questions, and the fourth section is more
Mhm.
deeper questions. I don't remember the reference, Andrew, if you remember it, but anyway, maybe even thinking of the context of your circles group, and how well do people know each other already, and thinking through your prompts in a way that maybe starts with where you're at in your own vulnerability. So maybe starting with some levels that allow you to just start the sharing initially, but don't ask the harder questions maybe. So,
Go
but if you
for it.
think you're ready,
Yeah.
throw them out there
Mhm.
and challenge by
I
choice.
love that. And it,
So,
it can be just, 5%. It's not an all or nothing thing, right? You can do something. Everyone can do something. Thank you both so much for being here. Thank you, Kayla. Thank you, Andrew. I loved hearing about that and seeing what an obvious impact this has had on just y'all. I can only imagine the impact that it's had on your chapter as a whole, and then even the larger community with people understanding one another at this deep level. And I also just want to throw out there, if you are a part of a Circles chapter, we will be uh, adapting or asking Circles Grant County for their window pane experience so that y'all can utilize that in your chapters. And we are going to have a storytelling event at our leadership conference in October. So if you have not already, early bird is open for that. So go check it out. And it's open, the first day is open to anyone. So if you're going to be in Ogden, Utah in October, come hang out with us and learn more about circles. So thank y'all so much, and we'll see y'all next month.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us.
thank you for having us.
Absolutely.